So I started the backend validation plan by inspecting the existing builder front end to understand how the validation of the client currently works before moving anything to the back end. So I went through the code responsible for the tile placement, tile removal, tile movement, the board state, the pending tiles, and the existing validation flow. So what caught my interest is the point wasn't to immediately rewrite the validation logic. Instead, I wanted to extract what the front end is already doing and understand what information is actually available when a player makes a move. That gave me a clear picture of what should stay on the front end and what can eventually be handled by the back end. From there, I used those findings to define the back end API boundary. So the goal is to make the front end changes as minimal as possible while moving the real Scrabble validation to the back end. So I tried communicating to builder to extract what handlers are used, the function, the board state, and how all of these things actually communicate together and what can be relayed usefully to be transferred from back end to front end to back end through API calls. So after that, I identify the actual API input, and the real answer boils down to the present board itself and the current moves or the pending moves by the player on that current turn. The back end needs more than just the word the player appears to create. It needs a relevant board state that the newly placed tiles, their positions, and enough information to determine the words created by that placement. This is important because the backend eventually needs to handle things like placement, rules, connected words, and dictionary validation based on the actual board position. So rather than guessing the API structures, I'm deriving it from the existing front-end behavior. The direction is now becoming clearer from front-end to validation API to back-end to Scrabble rules to dictionary and validation result and applying necessary changes to UI if any. So the front end remains responsible for the interaction and visual feedback, while the back end takes over the actual validation logic and the final authority of the rules. And that's where I left off. Understanding existing system, extracting the validation behavior, and defining what the backend needs before implementing the full validation engine.